Well, folks, here we are again on Friday morning. Of course, last week we talked about the potential for a storm system moving out of the central Rockies and giving us several shots of moisture during the early part of the week. In reality, the models really had this storm system wrong in regards to pieces of energy coming out on several consecutive days. And in fact, what we ended up seeing was a storm come out as a singular entity and developed a very impressive precipitation outbreak across the northern plains in the form of heavy snow and blizzard-like conditions. Further to the south, of course, we've seen severe thunderstorms erupt here in Nebraska, and for the first time in recorded history, we did note that there was 2 tornado touchdowns in the month of February. Now, we're not saying that tornadoes haven't occurred in February. This is just the first time in the last 50 years of data set that we have available that we have reports of tornadoes that occurred during the month of February with visual sightings. We have had several instances where we've had early March tornadic activity. The most notable, of course, was during the 1990 spring, where we had the first couple days of March with some significant severe weather outbreaks. So it's not unusual to get this type of severe weather this early. The question is this an indication that we're moving into a spring regime? And the other question we need to answer is, what is the impacts of this overall snow across the Dakota, since this was really the first significant event in a widespread nature across the region. Now, we had up to 2 inches of liquid equivalent moisture with this snow, and we do have some frost still on the ground, so I think we're going to see some portion of this primarily being a runoff component. I don't know as we're going to see a lot of it go into an infiltration component. So as we go forward, we're going to be looking for that frost to come out of the ground and see if we have repeat events on the same region to try to eliminate these accumulated deficits. Although we shrunk them a little bit, the deficits from October are still there, and there's something that we need to consider as we go forward, since we do expect about 5 inches of moisture in this region over the next 45 to 60-day period. So let's take a look at the upper air models and see if we have any more moisture in store for the Upper Plains region and Nebraska in particular. And as we go to the upper air maps, one thing I'll draw your attention to is the cool conditions that we've seen with the energy that moved across the state during yesterday that dropped some lighter snowfall totals across northern Kansas and some flurry activity across southeast and south central Nebraska has moved to our east, and we're getting a reinforcing shot of cold air into our region. So our highs are going to be mainly confined into the mid-30s across the northwest and north central portion of the state. And then as we get to southeast Nebraska, where the cold air tends not to be as influenced on our temperatures, we'll be looking at highs that'll be primarily in the low 40s. Now, as we go to tomorrow, what we're going to notice is there's going to be a little bit more energy in this northwest flow, and that may actually give us a lot of cloud cover, and that may hold our temperatures down somewhat. So we'll be looking at highs in the low 40s across the northeast. But as we get to the southwest, where this ridge is starting to build back in, we're looking at highs that will primarily be in the upper 40s. Now, as we get into Sunday, what we're going to notice is that whole trough system moves into the eastern United States, and we should see some significant weather all along the eastern seaboard. But we'll start to see this ridging pattern come in, and we're going to see some exceptionally warm temperatures. We're looking at highs at least in the mid-50s across the southwest. As we get closer to northeast Nebraska, where you're close to the jet core, we'll be looking at highs that will primarily be in the mid-40s. Now, as we get into Monday, now we start to see the ridge building into our region. Beautiful weather on store. We'll be looking at highs in the mid-50s across the northeast to the upper 60s across the southwest, and we may even paint a few low 70s. And the same thing on Tuesday, except we'll see some of the warmer air moving into northeastern Nebraska. So we'll be looking at highs in the low 60s north to the upper 60s across the south, with a few 70s possible. Now, as we get into Wednesday, another trough will start to make its way into the region, so some colder air filters into northwest Nebraska. We'll be looking at highs in the low 40s. In the southeast, where we're ahead of the cold front, highs in the upper 50s. And as we go into Thursday, we will see generally a warming trend building back in, highs in the upper 40s to the low 60s. And as we go the 8 to 14-day forecast, above normal temperatures. In terms of precipitation, no significant weather on store.